I'm Jodie Arnold. This is Wiswomen. I have Amanda Mondlock on the show today. She's the Victim Services Coordinator for CASA at UWEC. Thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Okay, so first thing, before we talk about anything else, is I want to know exactly what CASA is, because I'm a grad student at the university and I was not aware of this center until I had reached out to you.
Yeah, so CASA is like a community rape crisis center at UW-Eau Claire. It stands for the Center for Awareness of Sexual Assault. It started in 2003 and I've been there since 2005. And what it is it's all free and confidential services. We're registered, they call them SASP, we're a sexual assault service provider. I don't work for the university. I actually am funded through Family Support Center, and I have an MOU with the university to be housed on campus, to be directly accessible to students, faculty, and staff, and I have access to the network basically there. It's all free and confidential resources. The majority of what I do is one-on-one, non-therapeutic counseling. I do support groups. I do legal and medical advocacy if somebody needs to report to law enforcement or go to court or go to the hospital to get forensic evidence collected. I can accompany them and really be the eyes and ears to make sure that their rights are being met, and then let them know the steps that come next. I do a lot of information and referral. It's like one-stop shopping. Basically, I tell people for sexual assault and dating violence, and then also being at the university, I help people navigate that system where if they're choosing to report not to law enforcement but make a Title IX investigation through the university, I advocate for them through that process.
What's a Title IX investigation?
So a lot of people seem to think it's the same thing. They report to one thing and it goes everywhere, but it doesn't. It's completely separate from the legal system. So the university is obligated to provide a safe learning environment for all students, right? So if somebody has been sexually assaulted by another student, they can file a claim, make a report to the university, and they can investigate that. And then if somebody is found responsible and guilty for the sexual assault based on the university investigation, then they can face academic repercussions like probation, suspension, and at extreme cases, expulsion from the entire UW system.
So how did you find yourself working there? Did you go to school for this, or?
I didn't. It was kind of roundabout, but when you have conversations with people, it's pretty similar. People in this line of work often have women's studies backgrounds or social work backgrounds. Mine is in psychology, and I did graduate from UW-Eau Claire. I was sexually assaulted when I was a teen. I came to school actually for music education, and I just went on a downward spiral. I had anxiety and depression issues. I became an alcoholic. I flunked out of school. And when I hit rock bottom, it really became, it took somebody to point out, like, maybe this is not you. Maybe this is all connected to this assault. And it was like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And I started doing the work I needed to do, which is why you see a lot of AODA clinics and eating disorder clinics do this dual model, where they're working with previous traumas, which so many of us have, and the issues at hand in tandem, and it's so effective. And so then I got out of this hole I was in. I went back to school for psychology, and that was right a little bit after CASA had been founded. So I started volunteering, and it's like, this is where I need to be. I found my niche, and then I just slowly weaseled my way in, and I haven't left. I love it.
So, all right, when that happened to you, because that happened to me too, and as you were talking, I'm just making the link that I used to struggle with an eating disorder, and why I never put those things together, but also I never shared my story with anybody, publicly, until I guess really right now. When that happened to you, did you tell anybody about it?
I didn't. It's hard for students, and I think a lot of people, to remember or to understand what it was like for us. I'm 37, and back then, it wasn't talked about. We didn't have the resources we have. There was nowhere to go, and I just stuffed it, you know? And I don't know that telling anybody, being on this side of it now and helping people through the system, I don't know that telling anybody would have made it that much better for me.
Right.
It can't be guaranteed. So I have no regrets, but I wish I would have figured out sooner that this was the link that I was struggling with.
Yeah, and I'm 39, so I remember like in school having like somebody would come in and just give you very general good touch, bad touch stuff. So you're completely right. Had we gone to anybody, what would anybody have done with that information in the first place? There was really no resources. There was nothing like this in place.
No, absolutely not.
You know, and especially I was in high school, there was nothing that was going to happen because of that. And so I'm wondering, all right, so things have kind of changed, and now there's the whole Me Too movement. Have you felt the impact of that at the office? Like, have you noticed more people coming? I don't know how many people you see in your office anyway, but has there been an increase since that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen an impact, and we've all felt it. But it's not typically what people expect. You know, we're kind of in this coined Me Too era now, which is great. I mean, it's up and coming. It's here we are, right? But we're inundated with social media and with news platforms. We're inundated with stories of sexual assault and domestic and dating violence. And so survivors are really feeling that impact. There are a certain amount of people that are coming in and identifying their experiences for the first time and having questions. But I think more so, it's survivors that have had prior experiences that haven't dealt with it and maybe we're doing okay, right? Or survivors that have, and they're coming in and saying like, all of this is stressing me out, it's bringing up all the trauma again, and it's like opening this big wound. So people are struggling, right, with like secondary, almost vicarious trauma. Yeah. And then people's reactions, you know, it's like I say, don't read the comments, don't read the comments. And people are reading the comments and they're getting traumatized. And then I think the second way that I've really seen an impact is there's becoming almost a lack of support for survivors that are choosing an well, it's not really unconventional because it's the most underreported crime that we have in our country, but an unconventional path, and that they don't want to report. They don't want to disrupt their life. They don't think they can withstand that emotional impact. It's too great. And so what they do is they just get counseling, they get therapy, they find their own way to heal. And I think sometimes the Me Too era is impacting it in where you have to report. He or she might do this to other people, you know, and it puts this tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility on survivors. And I have even people calling law enforcement without asking them on their behalf and taking away a survivor's choice and their control and agency, right? And so I think it's important that we take a step back and we recognize it's awesome that so many women are coming forward and holding perpetrators accountable, but there are a lot of people that are not making that same choice, and we have to respect them and support them too. Like, they're out there and nobody owes you their story. Right. Nobody has to be on their blog, on Facebook, you know, telling everybody, well, this happened to me too, and this is, you know, so we have to just generally chill and support everybody through the process.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned to me before we started taping that you work with the DOJ. Mm-hmm. And okay, so what do you do with that? Yeah,
so my program, I'm funded through the Department of Justice, through a VOCA grant.
Oh, that's how your whole center exists. Okay.
Yes. So I'm funded strictly, I don't do prevention work, I'm funded to provide direct services to what we call primary and secondary survivors. But I'm also funded to train what we call first responders, so somebody that might be on the front lines that someone would disclose to. And I'm funded that way so that I train law enforcement, I can talk to people on campus about trauma-informed responses and kind of help update protocols. And I do these trainings with the Department of Justice, where mostly lately I've been going because Title IX is becoming a very hot button issue, especially with the hunting grounds having come out. Yeah. We need more training because there's been a heavy hammer put down on university investigations, right, which is well-deserved, but we need more training for them. So I've been going in with the Department of Justice and training law enforcement agencies for campuses, and then Title IX investigators, and dean of students, and all things like that. So, yeah.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's fun.
And all right, before we wrap up, I want to just go in a completely different direction because we do have kids that are almost the same age. And as we were chatting before, we used to be up at like the same
In the middle of the night. Yeah.
Like I accidentally watched the royal wedding just because I had one of my twins up. So your daughter's name is Avery, and she does Avery's Acts of Kindness. And I saw this adorable photo when I was just looking up stuff, and she was with some police officers and some art, and she had a little story. What is that? Like what?
She's so fun. I mean, there's a little bit of a backstory in that her dad was a local artist. He did mostly painting and tattooing, and he passed away in December. He had a long struggle with mental illness. And Avery had really been like, how do you explain death and the aftermath to a 6-year-old? And we had been looking at books because she wanted to know, well, where is Daddy now? Yeah. And we're an agnostic family. Her dad was an atheist. So I've really been explaining there's all different religions and all different beliefs about what happens. And she said, well, what's your religion? And I said, my religion is kindness. And it just was kind of this off-the-cuff response to a 6-year-old. And she just ran with it. And one day she said, Mom, like she was dragging a chair outside to the front lawn. And I said, what are you doing? And she's had lemonade stands before. And she said, well, I'm going to do art like my daddy. And I said, okay, well, are you gonna sell it? And she goes, nope, it's gonna be free. And I said, well, what's your hook? Like, what are you charging people, And she said, kindness. They have to do an act of kindness. And so she started this thing where she did Avery's Art for Kindness, and people would come and she would do a little drawing for them, and she would say, you just have to give this to somebody or do something nice for someone today. And it just snowballed, and of course everybody loved it, and she's very precocious, and so it's been a fun way for her, I think, to connect with her dad, but also just make a positive impact and pay it forward.
That makes my heart real happy. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Jodie Arnold. This is Wiswomen. See you next time.